From childhood, Steve dreamt of going into the mines to discover things, but because children weren't allowed in the mines, his dream never came true. Actually, Steve was very resourceful from a young age. He would make things from objects around him. Later, to fulfill his childhood dream, Steve finally entered the mines. There, after digging, he found an orb and an earth crystal. As soon as he placed the orb into the earth crystal, a portal opened before him. Steve crossed through the portal and arrived in another world called the Overworld. In reality, Steve had entered the game Minecraft. The Overworld was very beautiful. Above whatever you thought of, you could easily create there. So, Steve decided to stay there and build a paradise for himself. There, he met a wolf dog named Dennis. Steve made him his pet and continued building his world. Steve loved Dennis more than anything. A lot of time passed this way. Then, one day, Dennis discovered a strange door in the middle of the forests. Reaching there, Steve opened a portal, and because of Dennis, he himself also crossed through that portal and arrived in a completely different dimension of Minecraft called the Nether. There was no happiness, beauty, or creativity. It was like hell, ruled by the piglin Queen Malgosha, a demonic queen. She captured Steve and Dennis and took the orb from them. Actually, she had long wanted to obtain the orb and destroy the Overworld. So, to save the Overworld, Steve explained to Dennis that now he had to save the orb. When everyone was asleep, Steve, with Dennis's help, escaped from captivity, stole the orb, and gave it to Dennis. He told Dennis to take the orb back to Earth and hide it in his house. Dennis managed to send Dennis out of the Nether. Dennis, avoiding the piglins, exited the Overworld portal and arrived directly at Steve's house on Earth. As soon as he placed the orb under his bed, the orb and the crystal separated from each other. This also closed the Overworld portal. Now, in the present time, the 1980s, Garrett, the champion of the Hung City game, also known as Garrett, the garbage man, was barely making a living running his video game store. His economic situation wasn't good, and on top of that, he received a notice to vacate the premises. So, to earn money and save his store, he went to an auction to buy abandoned storage containers, similar to Storage Wars. There he learned that one store contained the most popular game of 1978, Cosmos. Hearing the name Cosmos, Garrett's ears perked up, and he hoped to make good money from it. Because of this, Garrett bought the store for many times its worth, immediately wrote a check for the auctioneer, and first opened the Cosmos box. But inside, along with some junk, there was only an orb and a crystal. In reality, this stuff belonged to Steve's long-abandoned house. Now, Garrett's remaining money was also gone. He was very sad. Then, holding the orb and crystal from the Cosmos box, he drove his car home at high speed. On the way, his car engine also gave out. Garrett became so frustrated that he got out of his car and shouted loudly. At the same time, a girl named Natalie arrived in Steve and Garrett's town with her younger brother Henry to fulfill her mother's last wish. Henry was an extremely clever and creative boy who always captured his imagination in drawings. Upon reaching the town, they met a real estate agent named Dawn. Actually, Natalie had a job at a chip-making company, and Dawn had come to give Natalie the keys to the house that the company had provided for them to live in. The next morning, before going to school, Henry went to Garrett's game store to meet him and looked at his things. After that, he went to school. In his first class, his art teacher asked all the children to draw a still life of an orange and a banana. All the children started drawing it, but Henry, following his imagination, drew a jetpack on the back of the banana. His teacher then explained to him that a still life was about drawing the subject as it appeared. Seeing his drawing, his classmates also started making fun of him. Then, to make his drawing a reality, Henry actually built a jetpack, attached it to a skeleton, and took it outside to the ground in front of everyone to test it. But then, a mischievous child cut a wire of the jetpack. As a result, his jetpack did fly, but it lost control and crashed directly into some people from the chip-making company, breaking it. Because of Henry's actions, his vice principal, Marilyn, asked Henry to call his guardian. So, instead of calling his sister, Henry directly called Garrett and told him that if he came to school as his uncle, he would give him $24. Garrett came to pick him up without wasting any time. Reaching the game store, Henry again calculated the specifications of his jetpack. According to his calculations, it was perfect, but feeling sad, he threw his entire diary into the dustbin. Just then, Henry's eyes fell on the orb and the crystal. Out of curiosity, he placed the orb into the crystal. As soon as the two connected, the orb pulled Henry into the old mines there. On the other side, Natalie became worried because Henry was not at school or home. So Dawn tracked Henry's mobile phone from Natalie's phone and found out that he had gone to the old mines. She immediately took Natalie to the mines. As soon as the four of them met there, the portal that had formed with the orb pulled them all inside and directly took them to the overworld. As soon as they saw the overworld, they were mesmerized by the place. Seeing the portal open, a nitwit villager came straight to Earth through the portal, and at the same time, Dennis returned to the overworld. At the same moment, the piglin Queen Malgosha received a signal that the orb had returned to the overworld. So Malgosha went directly to Steve and told him that the orb had returned. Steve thought his dog Dennis had returned. Then she made a deal with him. If he brought her the orb, she would spare his dog's life and release him from her captivity. Meanwhile, in the overworld, as soon as Natalie talked about leaving, night fell in the blink of an eye, and skeleton monsters attacked them. While running away from them, as soon as Henry collided with a tree, he discovered how to create things in this world. So, to protect himself, Natalie, Dawn, and himself from the monsters, he built a wooden wall around them, forming a fort, but the orb and the crystal were left outside. At the same time, Garrett, also saving his life, ran towards the fort. There, he found the orb on the ground. As soon as he picked it up, a monster shot an arrow and broke the crystal. But Garrett managed to get inside the fort with the orb. However, zombie monsters also came inside behind them. Now, before those monsters could knock them down from the fort and kill them, Steve arrived there and thoroughly defeated the zombie monsters. And as soon as the sun rose, all the zombies and skeleton monsters burned up and disappeared. After that, Steve introduced himself and explained to everyone that because the Earth crystal was broken, no one could return to Earth. But then, Steve told them about a way. A last Earth crystal was left in the Woodland Mansion, and now they had to get it. After telling them all this, Steve made a deal with them. He would find the crystal and send them back to Earth. But in return, those people would have to give something to Steve. Everyone agreed to this.
After this, to fight the dangers ahead, Steve first took them to a village to make weapons, where he had his own store. In his store, he showed Garrett and Henry the weapons and things he had made, which he had obtained by fighting in various battles. Just then, Garrett found an ender pearl. Steve was explaining to him that wherever you threw it, you would teleport there. But Garrett ignored him and threw it behind him. Immediately, Garrett teleported back. As soon as this happened, Garrett's pants ripped in his hand. Then, Steve taught them how to make weapons. Henry made a pressure gun for himself, which surprised even Steve. Meanwhile, Garrett accidentally made a strange nunchaku out of canister. But Garrett was only interested in the treasure that Steve had mentioned in his note. So he promised Steve the orb in exchange for the treasure that Steve had hidden in the mines there. At the same moment, Malgosha's soldiers, the piglins, attacked the village. So they all started fighting them. But the piglins attacked Garrett the most. While fighting, Natalie and Dawn got separated from the other three. In the meantime, Steve took Henry and Garrett up to the village wall, gave them iron wings to fly, and pointed to the mountains in front, telling them that the Woodland Mansion was beyond those mountains. To test the wings, Garrett pushed Henry off the wall first, and when Henry's wings opened before he hit the ground and started flying him, Garrett then jumped himself. But Steve, without wings, jumped and sat on top of Garrett. Now, while still in the air, they fought the piglins, but they crashed and fell before reaching the mountains. There, when Garrett and Henry asked, Steve explained that these piglins were Malgosha's soldiers, and a long time ago, his own people had filled her with hatred by mocking her dancing creativity. Since then, she had wanted to destroy everyone's creativity, and she needed the orb to destroy the overworld, and he needed the orb to save the life of his dog Dennis. On the other side, Malgosha, angry with her general for not bringing the orb, had her great hawk kill him. Meanwhile, in the overworld, Dawn and Natalie found a wolf dog. Dawn gave it a bone, and then she saw on its collar that it was Dennis. So Dennis, smelling Steve, led the two of them behind him towards the Woodland Mansion. Here, under Garrett's pressure, Steve first took them to his hero's mine, but then the great hawk blew up the mine wall. So Steve quickly put Henry and Garrett in a mine cart and tried to escape from there, but he got stuck in his creeper form. But even then, he somehow managed to get out of the mine. However, all the creepers exploded, blowing up the mine. Henry got angry with Garrett because they were about to die because of his greed. So Garrett explained to him that he desperately needed money because he was bankrupt, and everything he had left was also going to be gone. Hearing all this, Henry comforted him, saying, "You are not alone, because you are my friend." Then, reaching the Woodland Mansion, Steve told them that the mansion had 3 floors. On the first floor were the pillagers, axe-wielding killers. On the second floor, evokers filled with dark magic roamed. And on the third floor was the earth crystal guarded by Endermen. Then Steve told them that no matter what happened, they should not look into the Enderman's eye. Then, according to Garrett's plan, they went inside the mansion and started playing music to distract all the pillagers. Taking advantage of this, Henry crossed the second floor, but the pillagers saw him and started chasing him to kill him. Henry ran and reached the third floor. Here, Garrett fought a chicken jockey who beat Garrett badly. In the meantime, Henry found the earth crystal, but Henry accidentally looked into the Enderman's eye. This caused him to have hallucinations that everyone he knew thought he was a loser and useless. But Henry composed himself and attacked the Enderman, killing it. As soon as the Enderman died, Henry found an Ender Pearl, which had the power of teleportation. Now, having obtained the crystal, as soon as the 3 of them came out of the Woodland Mansion and were crossing the bridge, Malgosha arrived there with her piglins, ordered her piglins to kill them all, snatched the orb from Henry, and left. Then, Garrett pushed Henry and Steve out of the way and started fighting the piglins alone, but the piglins blasted the bridge, causing Garrett to fall down from the bridge along with them. Due to the shock of the blast, Henry and Steve also fell to the ground and became unconscious.
But when Steve regained consciousness, he saw that Dennis had found them, and Natalie and Dawn were with him. On the other side, Malgosha placed the orb on the Nether portal, activated its laser, and plunged everything into darkness. Then she started summoning her army into the overworld. So, Henry, Steve, Dawn, and Natalie prepared to fight to get the orb back. Henry and Natalie created iron golems, protectors of the villagers. They all clashed with the piglins. Seeing her army losing, Malgosha sent her Great Hawk into battle. So Steve went directly to fight Malgosha, and Henry, with the help of Ender Pearls, teleported straight to the orb. Now, before Henry could take the orb, the Great Hawk fired at him, knocking Henry down. But before he hit the ground, Garrett arrived there and caught him in midair, saving him. Actually, Garrett had survived the blast because of the piglin's air balloon. After that, Garrett blew up the Nether portal door, destroying it. This closed the portal, and the darkness disappeared. Sunlight appeared. Because of the light, all the piglins turned into zombies, and Malgosha lost her power, but she still tried to cleverly kill Steve, but failed and died. Then, after everything was fine, Steve entrusted his beloved dog Dennis to Dawn and decided to stay there himself. So, Natalie said to him, "Why don't you spread some of your magic in the real world?" Hearing this, Steve changed his mind, and he also returned to Earth with the orb. There, they all together created a new game for Garrett called Block City, which became a hit. Here, Steve gave a fantastic singing performance at Garrett's store. Actually, Steve was Garrett's store partner. Meanwhile, Dawn quit her job and opened a portable zoo to live her dream, and Natalie also opened a self-defense academy for everyone. And Henry, this time, came to school wearing his jetpack himself, making him the coolest and most popular kid. And with this, the Minecraft movie had a happy ending.